Hey, how's it going? Well, I was trawling through my shelves in my cave here, looking for a book that maybe nobody's really talked much about here on YouTube, and I thought I would today talk a little bit about one of my favorite TV series, a British TV series. I love British TV, called The Avengers. Now, this is not Marvel's The Avengers. Those of you of a certain age will likely remember this Avengers. This is the Avengers from UK, starring Patrick Macnee as John Steed. It's kind of a spy, espionage, colorful action adventure spy show from the 60s spy craze era. Started off before James Bond, or right around that time. And some of the leading ladies for Mr. Macnee went on to be Bond girls themselves, namely Honor Blackman and Diana Rigg, most famously known here for this series as Mrs. Emma Peel. Now, this book is full of reminiscences. It's basically a loose autobiography by Patrick Macnee with some strong help, I'm sure, from Avengers superfan Dave Rogers. So I want to take a little look at this fun little book. It's a slim thing, but it has lots of very nice color photos and stills from the show. And for those of you who are fans of the show, you might enjoy looking at this. And those of you who are unfamiliar with this series, I highly recommend it. So without further ado, let's head over to the table and I will start doing a little flip through of this fun little volume. All right, so this is The Avengers in Me, published by a company called TV Books. You'll see some cool little stills or shots from the different Avengers programs. Avengers and Me, of course, this is kind of star Patrick Macnee, who was the one recurring member, I guess, of this show, main actor, lead actor throughout the whole series, or several, both the original series from the 60s and the New Avengers from the late 70s. And Patrick Macnee, this is his most famous role. Of course, he's had several other acting roles. He played with his friend Roger Moore. He was the sidekick in View to a Kill, Roger Moore's last Bond movie. He's been in tons of other things, including, I believe he's in the Alistair Sim Christmas Carol in some of the Fezziwig flashback scenes and the Ghost of Christmas Past scenes with Alistair Sim there. Loved, very well loved actor from this show, kind of the epitome of the British gentleman. And in this case, he's basically a spy. Those of you who don't know The Avengers is essentially, well, we'll go through it here inside. You'll get a good idea of what it is. But it's essentially a very British, very quirky spy, espionage, borderline science fiction sort of show with some fun action and witty repartee between Steed and usually a lovely female I hate to say the word assistant because it's not really true. They're a co-lead for the most part. They share the espionage and action duties along with Steed. And that's why the show was rather groundbreaking for the time. And here we have a fun quote from Peter O'Toole, the famous actor Peter O'Toole, who frequently would run into Patrick Macnee. In this case, I believe it was in the elevator somewhere at some studios. And he says, "What are you doing recently, Patrick?" "Oh, I'm doing the New Avengers." "But Patrick, you're always doing the Avengers," because he did it for so long. Very funny and well-known quote. And then we have some of the breakdown of the black and white fourth season titles of the Avengers. The one that introduced Diana Rigg to the world as the gorgeous and bodacious and very capable Mrs. Peel. And again, we have not just black and white stills in here. As you can see, this was published in 1997. So we're going on almost 30 years old for this book. So it's just a nice slim little volume. Obviously a nice picture of Patrick Macnee when he was still still hale and hearty. He lived quite a long life. He only passed away, I believe, 5 or 6 years ago. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it hasn't been too long since he was among the living, retired in California. Lovely fellow, by all accounts. This is from 1998, his preface. And here is him as a younger man, smoking, of course. He lived quite long, considering he was a heavy smoker. He was outlived by all his leading ladies, though, but he far outlived Ian Henry, his first co-star. Here's him talking to Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten, famous, part of the British royal family there. John Schlesinger, famous British filmmaker who directed a lot of British television before he went on to films. And there's Sidney Newman, who was the Canadian producer who was hired by the BBC. He spearheaded not only the Avengers, but also Doctor Who. Again, he was only involved in the initial first William Hartnell season in 1963, but that's not a couple of bad credits to have to your name. Iconic series, The Avengers and Doctor Who. Here's Ian Henry, young and still fit before alcoholism ravaged his facial features and his life. He was popular in a series called Police Surgeon, and he played the same kind of character. So here they are, the men in raincoats and trench coats. Ian Henry is Dr. Keel, and a more gruffer, rougher, grittier version of John Steed, played by Patrick Macnee. The whole idea behind this first series, which was very popular, unfortunately very few of them exist today. I think only 3 1/3 have been discovered. 1/3 of one episode exists, and then another one was Tunnel of Fear, I believe, is the episode that was recovered in a couple of years ago, complete. But most of them were wiped in the typical obnoxious and, I guess understandable in the time, considering the British broadcasting company, BBC, and also ITV and the various outlets of ITV, the different regional producers of television content, all thought television was pretty ephemeral and didn't need to be preserved. So sadly, most of these are gone, but a little grittier version of the series. The first 3 seasons were filmed in studio most of the time with a little bit of exterior footage, but it's kind of a different type of show than the series became in the Diana Rigg years and Linda Thorson years. The whole idea why the show is called The Avengers is in the first episode, Dr. Keel's girlfriend, perhaps fiance. It's not existing, so I haven't seen it, but his fiance is murdered by drug dealers or racketeers, some kind of criminal element in London. And Steed is the mysterious government man who comes to get Dr. Keel's help in bringing them to justice, bringing them to book. That's the Avengers of the title. And after that, the two would team up in frequent cases. This early season of the Avengers lacks most of the quirkiness or weirdness that would come to eccentricity that would come to characterize the later series. Another fun thing of this book is it has some script excerpts from various episodes. This is Hot Snow. This is one of the episodes that does survive, that was recovered. And some pretty sexy scenes in some of these early Avengers episodes for British TV was sometimes a little much more lax on the censorship issue for sexuality and sensuality than was the case in America. And then here, Diamond Cut Diamond. You can see the studio where they were shooting, kind of cramped. It doesn't look so cramped here, but it's quite cramped with those massive cameras they'd have to wheel around. And sometimes you'll see occasional, just like in Doctor Who or other shows of that time, from the early 60s, black and white, BBC and ITV era, some mistakes. He's a fairground barker, a carny in Tunnel of Fear. This is one that was recovered recently. Scene from Double Danger. And now, introducing the lovely Honor Blackman as Kathy Gale. Some of you may recognize her, this actress, as Pussy Galore from Goldfinger, the famous role in Goldfinger, the third James Bond film, which she left this series to appear in, Goldfinger. And there's even a joke later in the Diana Rigg season 4 where Steed gets a Christmas card from Kathy Gale saying she was at Fort Knox. Very cute little in-joke there. Anyway, Kathy Gale's character is the one who introduced the whole equal, you know, they were still using some scripts that were written for Ian Henry, but he had, you know, he was quite popular and wanted to prove himself in film, and so walked out of the series. And so they just used a woman taking over the male counterpart role in these early scripts, and it worked out extremely well. And that's probably why the series continued as long as it did, because she's got this deep voice and a very sexy but kind of cold and tough way about her as Kathy Gale. And again, very beautiful actress who studied judo and was so proficient in it that she ended up knocking out accidentally one of the stuntmen in a fight scene later with a kick to his face. Leather here, of course, she made leather and kinky boots famous from this series. And Steed getting to become still a little more of a, like in the first season, a little more questionable means and methods, a little more darker character than he eventually becomes in the series. But he starts to slowly move over into the Steed that we know from the Diana Rigg years. Polished, suave, gentleman's gentleman, but capable of violence when needed. Beautiful, beautiful actress playing Kathy Gale, Honor Blackman. She started wearing leather and short skirts so she could do the fight scenes, but she also would wear trousers as well. And a very famous and very fun episode involving a black magic cult, an episode called Warlock, a little script excerpt from that. And then some of the action happening with judo and various things in those episodes in the second season. And the series at this stage starts to get a little more quirky, a little more out there with its plots. Here's Honor Blackman rocking the leather cat suit there. And pouring herself a little bit of tea. Nice behind the stage thing there. There are a few episodes that Honor Blackman still did not appear in, and so they would use some occasional guest characters, including Julie Stevens, who was by no means the kind of tough, usual Avengers, colleague or counterpart to Steed, but here she is using some of her, some judo herself. There's a famous shot with the slit skirt and the leather skirt there with Steed. Patrick Macnee always admits it in this autobiography or this autobiographical take on the series that he always struggled with his weight and had a hard time, fluctuating between it. Here's looking very fighting fit. He was a lover of food, and that I can definitely sympathize with him there. That's a cute picture. And Kathy flirting a little bit in a more, maybe in the show, she's much less flirtatious than Diana Rigg would be as Mrs. Peel. Steed and Mrs. Peel have some famously saucy and flirtatious dialogue. There's, Steed is always trying to get it on with Kathy Gale in the season 2 and 3, but she's having none of it, really. So there's more of a frosty professional relationship, I guess. But still, they bounce off each other nicely. Again, giving you an idea of the very huge cameras and small sets. And, of course, Kathy Gale sometimes rides motorcycles, and Honor Blackman also liked riding motorcycles around. Kinky boots, getting into season 3. Patrick clowning around. There she is rocking a bikini. I believe Patrick Macnee, who was, rather fresh about all of his female co-stars, and they loved him dearly, but he wasn't shy to talk about their various attributes, and he did say that Honor Blackman had a body to die for, a figure to die for, and she was really a nicely put together lady, obviously. I have read this before, but it's been a long time, so I've forgotten what exactly he was writing about. Here's a season 3 episode, another famous one, Lobster Quadrille. Here's a promotional brochure for the Honor Blackman series, The Avengers 2 Against the Underworld, in this exciting series of hour-long programs for television. Still maintaining a little bit more of a grittier film noir edge slightly from the first season, but gradually morphing or transmogrifying into the series that it would become, where it's kind of Avengerland, as it's sometimes called by fans, where it doesn't seem to have a lot of people in it. They're all pretty much eccentric, except for our leads here, and things become more and more strange, witty, and outlandish. But here's still 1 foot in reality, I guess you could say. And now, here we go, How to Succeed in America, with the introduction of the gorgeous and lovely and iconic Diana Rigg as Mrs. Emma Peel. Notice M. Appeal, Man Appeal. Apparently one of the makeup or hairdresser lady or wardrobe woman and that came up with this idea, or maybe the script continuity person. She came up with this idea. She has to have M. Appeal, Man Appeal, M. Appeal. Haha, right? Okay. Now, this is a very fine actress in her own right, Elizabeth Shepard, who was first cast as Mrs. Peel, but the producers and showrunners, one of which was Brian Clemens. Brian Clemens was not happy, or the studio, I forgot exactly who. They weren't happy with the rushes they were seeing of her. There is some footage still extant, I believe, of her trying out in the part. I've seen her in several other things. She's in Tomb of Ligeia with one of the Corman Poe films with Vincent Price, and she's very good in that. So she seems like she would have been a good choice for Emma Peel. But as it turned out, it was for the best, because we get the lovely stage-trained and very talented, sultry, and sophisticated Diana Rigg. Here's a few more shots from the initial footage with Elizabeth Shepard. Here she is, Elizabeth Shepard, filming The Town of No Return. This is an eventual episode that was filmed with Diana Rigg later when she comes in. Watch out for the Avengers. And here she is, again, with some lovely footage of her. Ray Austin, stuntman, later turned director in Britain as well as Hollywood, in a photo publicity shoot. Sending them flying. Now, as many positive things we could say about Diana Rigg, she wasn't as convincing in the fight scenes, for sure. So some of the fight scenes in her series, especially in the Color series, Color season 5, a little bit silly, perhaps, but that's part of the fun of the show. But all the rest of her performance and her demeanor, definitely overcomes all of that. The Town of No Return, the episode that she replaces Elizabeth Shepard in. The famous scene from the episode A Touch of Brimstone, where she gets put in, and there's Steed taking a nice gander of her. She's playing a Madame Sin character in the very skimpy costume, which has launched 1,000 fangasms across the internet and before. Apparently, this episode had some scenes that were cut for American showing because it was too sexy, but a lot of the ABC executives in America would show this during their New Year's Eve bashes so they could ogle her, I guess, even though the regular audience in America couldn't see. Again, nice, lovely behind-the-scenes shot of these two who got along like a house on fire. Patrick Macnee got along with all of his leading ladies very well. Actress Barbara Jefford, so he was doing some other work, not just the Avengers, of course. Very domestic little scene there. Some pretty wild outfits that Diana Rigg would get to wear. Here's a cool, from designer Harry Potter, some of the sets. I believe this is this Steed's apartment? Looks more like Emma Peel's apartment, the set. And some Lovely scene there. Isn't she gorgeous? Just a lovely lady. Diana Rigg, we lost just a few years ago. One of her final roles was in Game of Thrones. So she was a very fine actress, acting for a long time, long career. Here she is in a skimpy outfit, the girl from Auntie. She wasn't overly shy back then, for sure. That's a nice shot of her in this, one of her Emma Peelers. She called them Emma Peelers, these kind of catsuity things that they would put her in with little strange cutouts. Into color, going into season 5 now, the last of Diana Rigg seasons in color. And the show became, you know, fans argue over this back and forth, whether the black and white or the color Diana Rigg seasons are the best. And while the color seasons are a lot of fun and just gorgeous to behold in color, there's no doubt that the black and white season is superior story-wise. Christopher Lee, who appeared in an episode. Peter Cushing's in an episode. There's a lovely shot of Diana with their hair all tousled there as they're about ready to leave London Airport. There's one of her famous kind of jumpsuits that she would wear. Laurie Johnson, who composed the famous theme music. It's Diana with some kind of Chinese dress, it looks like. Very fetching. Sitting on Steed's lap there. Unlike the rule in 60s American TV where you couldn't show a woman's belly button, thus Barbara Eden as Jeannie would have to cover up her navel in that show. No problem with that in the British, for British censors. Mrs. Peel frequently is showing off her very shapely abdomen and belly button, no problem whatsoever. There she is, appearing as James Bond's ill-fated bride in the wonderful On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which she, again, just like Honor Blackman left the series to go star in a James Bond movie, so did Diana Rigg. She was fed up with not getting equal pay and treated properly financially by the skinflint producers, and she decided to go jump at the opportunity to appear in a James Bond film. And fans' hearts were crushed. Her departure kind of marred the replacement's time in the show, and that is the lovely Linda Thorson as Tara King, who tried her best. She brought a different kind of more youthful and hero-worshipping edge, I guess you could say, as another agent who worked with Steed and takes over. And actually there's a fun trade-off episode where Emma Peel leaves and Tara King comes in, and they kind of pass the baton, so to speak. And Mrs. Peel, of course, her husband is purported to be lost in the jungle somewhere of South America or something, which is why she's Mrs. Peel, but is so flirtatiously open with Steed. And there's a real have they, will they, won't they, or have they, are they sort of vibe going on through that series. And of course, at the end, when she bids Steed adieu and walks out the door because her husband has been found and returned. And of course, he happens to look just like Steed, which is very interesting. Anyway, poor Linda Thorson was given a really hard time. Brian Clemens came back to the series and came up with a lot of creative scripts, but he didn't really like her casting. He tried to mess around with her look, gave her this really stupid blonde wig. But she threw herself into the part, and there's a lot of really good action that she does in the show, and the show continues to get really odd and creative. But the blonde wig doesn't really suit her, and she has given some bad hairstyle choices. But there are some diehard fans who think this is the best of all the Avengers seasons, and as I've watched more of it, I don't think it's the best, but it's awfully good. There's plenty of good stuff in there. Speaking of the Forget-Me-Not, this is where they pass the baton. Now, she's not that much shorter than Emma Peel or Diana Rigg. They're just standing on the stairs. Mrs. Peel is leaving as Tara King is coming up the stairs to take over. The Avengers, this inimitable series, enters its 4th great year in the major markets of the world. And filming the first credit sequence there. Now, they kept after poor Linda Thorson for her weight, and even though she was perfectly well proportioned lady, they gave her a hard time and put her on diets and many different costume things, which made it her life a little difficult in the initial part of filming of this season. Here is Patrick Newell, who is now cast as Steed's boss, Mother. Now, in the previous seasons, we never saw Steed's employer. We just knew that he worked for the government in some capacity, left fairly mysterious. But in this season, because Tara King is also an agent in the similar office or similar branch of government, they sometimes report to Mother, as they call it. They called his character a kind of odd character who would set them out on their assignments. But there's some amusing scenes with him and some amusing episodes and some very good episodes. And Linda Thorson really threw herself into the role and tried to do the best. There's sometimes they get a little too comical for my taste, but most of the episodes are quite fun, still very stylish. And of course, in the final episode, they're in a rocket ship shot off into space and they pop open some champagne. And that's how they go out. But they ended up filming at the end of when the show was canceled, basically, or pulled off the air, finally retired after, by British standards, what was a very successful run. And Patrick Macnee went off to film a pilot called Mr. Jericho, which didn't go anywhere, but which is still available to watch and quite fun. Then they did a champagne commercial, I think, a Brut champagne commercial, or either for British TV or French TV, and they reunited Linda Thorson and Patrick Macnee, and the response was so positive that they decided to bring the show back in the new Avengers, which was started, I believe, 1976, 7 or 8 years after the original. And because they thought Patrick Macnee might be too old for the action scenes, they hired Gareth Hunt to play Gambit. He gets a lion's share of the action, but not wanting to be left out of filming those scenes. Initially he was hired to kind of be more of a consultant to the new Avengers, but Patrick Macnee worked hard to get in fighting trim again, and so they brought him back in a more active capacity. And of course, Joanna Lumley, who some might know from the comedy hit Ab Fab, absolutely fabulous, and many other shows, Sapphire and Steel. She also has a small part in the George Lazenby-headed Bond film On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the film that Diana Rigg left this series for to appear in, and Joanna Lumley has a brief part in that. Anyway, Patrick's talking about this series, the start of this series, The New Avengers, one of its well-known episodes, The Eagle's Nest, starring Peter Cushing. Joanna Lumley, very pretty lady with really long legs, and her and Gareth Hunt together as Gambit. Seen from an episode, The Eagle's Nest, and also used in the opening credits quite often. Laurie Johnson came back to do the new theme, more martial and kick-ass kind of 70s version of the original Avengers theme. Some really fun episodes here. And this show, The New Avengers, which is one of the things that prompted me to pull this off the shelf, The New Avengers has always looked like ass on its DVD sets from various various companies that have released it, but Studio Canal recently remastered the whole series in 4K and has released the show on 4K and Blu-ray. I'm planning to get the set soon in the new year because this is a very fun show. I have all the other seasons. The early seasons are not up, high enough quality to benefit from a Blu-ray release, but I do have the Diana Rigg and Linda Thorson seasons all on Blu-ray, and I will have this one soon. A lot of fun. And some good action. There's the production crew on the show. Now, the weird thing about this show is that there's not really 2 seasons, I guess, but there are kind of 2 parts. The first part was filmed in Britain, and then there was some Canadian co-production in Montreal, And some of those later episodes are a little odd and not quite as focused as the first group, the first batch. Cool shot of Joanna Lumley there as Purdy with their very famous hairstyle. There they are filming in France. A lot more outdoor filming in these later seasons of the show, and including the new Avengers. That's a cool still right there with Ontario in the background. So some filming in Montreal, some in Ontario for these later episodes. One thing, they brought back Ian Henry from the first season, Dr. Keel era of the show, in the new Avengers. Unfortunately, they missed the opportunity to have him play his character. They have him play a different character, which is kind of strange. They didn't fully fulfill the possibilities by having Ian Henry play his same character. There's a nice shot of the handsome visage of Patrick Macnee. Life After the Avengers. Here's him clowning around on the Sea Wolves. Again with Roger Moore. That also had Gregory Peck and David Niven in it. Here's him talking about his lovely leading ladies. Here's a very famous still of Joanna Lumley with an open jacket and scarf covering something that should be covered for television. And some various other projects. Here's him with his wife Baba and his son and daughter. Son Rupert and daughter Jenny. Anyway, a very fun volume. As you can see, there's plenty of text and full of reminiscences from Mr. Macnee about his time on the show, the various incarnations and his various leading ladies. That is The Avengers and Me by Patrick Macnee with Dave Rogers. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. If you are a fan of this show and if you haven't seen this show, I recommend you checking it out. It's a pretty cool British 60s swinging 60s spy series. Definitely recommended for fans of classic television and stylish 60s decor and fashion. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.